Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for Mars and Pisces, and what I am going to be doing is talking about what Mars represents, what Pisces represents. But if you don't know where your Mars is at, please check below this video. I have a link and it goes to a list of all the dates, and you can find your date of birth on there. And for some people, Mars changes signs on your date of birth, so you might want to watch both videos because you might see yourself in both of those Mars signs. So Mars represents our drive, our ambition, and how we assert ourselves. Does everybody ask for what they want very openly? I don't think so. I think some people are a little bit reticent, and Mars and Pisces is one of those people, so spoiler alert on that one. That's one of the facets of Mars. It's also how we express anger. And if you think about it, how we ask for what we want and expressing anger are somewhat similar, strangely enough, because asking for what you want is a third chakra deal. It's the power chakra, the solar plexus, that's where the energy center is, that deals with our sense of empowerment. And anger is also in this area as well. So when somebody has an underdeveloped third chakra, they have a tendency to not ask for what they want because they don't feel that they can get what they want or that they deserve to even be able to ask for what they want. So there tends to be more accepting what the outer world brings them, so more passivity and less assertiveness, less self-empowerment, and more victimhood. And this ties in very much to anger in a strange way, because sometimes when people feel very disempowered, they may be the ones that kick up the biggest fuss. And sometimes anger can be manipulative. So I'm going to get into that in a minute because Mars and Pisces can be manipulative too. But let's talk about did I say that Mars represents a sex drive? Because it does. So let's talk about what Pisces represents. It's a mutable water sign. So it's very changeable, and in terms of being influenced by others especially. Water is impressionable, and mutable water sign, forget about it. So Pisces is ruled by Neptune, which is the planet of addiction, of self-deception, just, lying to oneself, but being lied to, I think it is more self-deception. Oh, sometimes it can be deception though. Somebody with a strong Neptune, maybe a challenged Neptune. When I say strong, I should say maybe a lot of contacts to Neptune. Sometimes they can bend the truth too, because sometimes reality and fantasy is not far apart. So it's not like they're just necessarily scheming to deceive others. They, in their minds, have a very rich fantasy life, and that can play into what comes out of their mouth. Pisces is very imaginative, spiritual, kind-hearted. Very important to note those traits because, as I said, Mars is what drives us, what gets us motivated. And for Mars and Pisces, helping other people, especially being moved emotionally by somebody else's plight, can really influence a Mars and Pisces person to take action on the part of that person on behalf of them. But this has a double-edged sword connotation to it, because that same emotional impulse, or no, that's not impulse, that emotional impetus to do something, based on feeling sorry for somebody or having compassion for them, that can lead to other people exploiting this person because they know that they have this soft part inside of them. And so a person like this has to have boundaries. Pisces, Neptune has no boundaries. That's one of the aspects of Neptune, is that it's about dissolving things, dissolution, including boundaries. And in order to be assertive, you have to have boundaries that if somebody crosses, you can say, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that because you did this, and I don't allow that in my life. I have lived with somebody with Mars and Pisces for many, many years, so I consider myself something of an expert. Pisces is the symbol of two fish swimming in opposite directions, which is perfect for what Pisces represents. Sometimes people who have a prominent Pisces have a tendency to feel like a victim. And there's a reason for this. It's not dropping from the sky. There can very well be something that happened to them in their life. And this could be the sun in Pisces as well, or moon or rising, and Mars, Venus, all the personal planets. But because Mars is a driving force and it requires action, this is where things can get a little bit tricky when you have Mars and Pisces. Because if somebody has really witnessed, experienced being a victim in some capacity, and I'm sure all of us have in some way or another, but with a person with a prominent Pisces, this may be an ongoing thing where they might have seen a parent who also was helpless to some degree. They were living with domestic abuse. They have addictive tendencies. And that's a big one with Pisces and with Neptune, is addiction, because it ties into the fact that Neptune can be about illusion and also sensitivity and psychic sensitivity. And for some people with Pisces in a prominent position, it can be too much. George Harrison was a Pisces. He had a song with the Beatles called "It's All Too Much." That's like a perfect description sometimes of Pisces. It's all too much. So escaping from the quote unquote reality, harsh reality, is always there for Pisces. Pisces is very creative and imaginative. Actually, being creative is a saving grace for people with Mars and Pisces, so that they don't do destructive things. The house that Pisces and Neptune rule is the 12th house in astrology. And that one of the key phrases there is, or key terms, is self-undoing, which is basically tripping yourself up, behaviors that people do that are counterproductive, that are self-destructive. And so addiction is just one of those things. One of them can be trusting the wrong person, allowing oneself to be manipulated. If somebody tells you a sob story, does that mean that you have to go out and do something for this person? Maybe some people will hear that and think, I'm kind of hard-hearted. I'm not. But I do have Mars in Capricorn. I'm not like a Mars and Pisces person, that's for sure. And these people are really suckers for sob stories. And I don't want to say sucker in a bad way. That's just a turn of a phrase. I mean, they have very big hearts. And there has to be more discernment, because when you're acting as a Pisces, then sometimes you're acting on emotion. Sometimes you're acting on illusion, other people's deception. You're believing. Maybe you want to believe certain things that in your heart of hearts you know isn't true. The key thing that I think Mars and Pisces people have to really embrace is that they are not victims. Even if they've had things in their past that suggest otherwise. Never to feel sorry for oneself or to act on anything based upon feeling that they are victims or that other people are victims. Yes, some people do have, harsh experiences. We all do from time to time, and you can help them out. But if there's a pattern with somebody where they always have some sob story, and I'm sure we know people like this, who it's always like, oh, I forgot to do this, and then this happened, and then the end of the world happened. And they always have, but you notice that they always have problems that they want other people to fix for them. So that's like a key that a Mars and Pisces person has to realize, because you guys are not people who take action in a uniform kind of way. As I said, two fish swim in opposite directions. So how can you marshal your forces when you have all these competing desires and maybe sympathies, divided between different people? Remember that you are a person too. So when you're having compassion for other people in their situations, don't ever neglect to remember how something will affect you. And put yourself on the top of the list of people that you want to care about, because you're no good to other people if you are if your life is being ruined by somebody else's bad behavior that you're trying to save. Because with Mars and Pisces, sometimes maybe the person can get into this trap of trying to help another person who is on some kind of self-destructive path. And that is going to very likely not end well, because people change because of themselves. Yes, of course, we all can influence people to better themselves, but they have to be ready for it. So I'm speaking specifically about addiction because that's such a big one where people get hooked into it. But never think that you are responsible for other people's problems and that you are the solution either, because you can get into this martyrdom where you are sacrificing for their happiness. It doesn't work that way. They have to want it. And when somebody wants something badly enough, they go after it. Yes, be someone they can talk to, someone they can lean on, but not trying to do it for them. I think that's where Pisces kind of gets tripped up. There's also kind of sporadic ambition with these types of people, where sometimes when they're feeling emotionally on, they can go and grab the brass ring, and other times they may feel insecure, like they're not sure about themselves. It's very easy for a person with Mars and Pisces to get into these particular, how would I call them? I don't want to say just moods, but in these different, they can just change. Maybe sometimes they have a really amazing work ethic. I know with my partner, he can get very motivated. And then other times it's, to the outside world, this person may look adrift, like they don't have any direction in their life. Never believe that about a Mars and Pisces person. I don't know why I'm talking about this like I'm talking to other signs. I should say this directed at the Mars and Pisces person, you, but sometimes people are cross-watching too. But never believe that you are without a purpose, because you may just be going more inward at a certain time, and you may find that you have a more spiritual attitude, that you want to meditate more or just rest, and therefore you feel like you need that downtime. And I would say definitely that Mars and Pisces people are influenced by their moods. And so if something negative happens, that can definitely take the wind out of your sails. And you have to honor the fact that this is the way you're wired, but by the same token, don't allow anyone or anything to kind of derail your dreams. even if it seems like it was some kind of a real disappointment, just realize that you can still have good things in your life, but you have to persevere. It's very hard, I think, for Mars and Pisces people to do things day after day after day, because that mutability and the fact that water is also so receptive to the energies around them that it's kind of hard to tune out that part of your influence. And you may be the kind of person where if you're on a roll, if people are saying great things about you, you might just be on top of the world. And then other times you may be feeling like lack of energy even. It might even affect you physically where you don't even feel motivated to do things. So you have to honor that you're wired this way, but by the same token, think of little tweaks that you can do. Look at how you typically do things and try to modify it so that you take into account your emotional nature. An example would be if you tend to get kind of unmotivated when it comes to work, when you have a negative experience with a client or a customer, then you might say, okay, I'm going to take out, after I have that negative experience, I'm going to take the next day for myself, and I'm just going to rest a lot. It's going to be like a retreat. I'm not going to talk to anyone. I'm going to meditate a lot, and I'm going to journal. I'm going to reflect on what happened, and it's basically honoring the need for that downtime, but not allowing it to have a life of its own where it just kind of snowballs into something that lasts for an extended period of time. Because when somebody has this kind of situation, they might be tempted to continue to go downhill. And it wouldn't be permanent because then something else would inspire you. But, wasting too much time being upset about something that happened that kind of was discouraging, because you do have a great deal of sensitivity. And it will depend, though, on other factors. So, for instance, if you have the sun in Aries and you have Mars in Pisces, you may have this little corner of yourself that feels disempowered, that always feels like a victim. And you have to consciously refrain from framing your life that way. And it takes the awareness that you're doing it in the first place and why it is destructive. Not everyone can admit this to themselves. Some people may have an excuse as to why they're doing whatever it is that they're doing. So by being aware of it and knowing why it's tripping you up, you're on the way to nipping it in the bud when it occurs. Also, let's talk about anger issues, because Mars in Pisces can be indirect, it can be passive-aggressive, which basically means being indirect in expressing your displeasure about something. So somebody says something to you, and instead of saying, hey, wait a second, why did you say that? That's not very nice. What's going on? Are you angry about me for some reason? They will maybe have a negative expression on their face, a negative tone in their voice, and then when the other person says, why are you being so negative to me? Is something wrong? Then they come out and say it. But they can't come out and just say it by themselves. And it may feel empowering in some way that the person is doing this, but it's not. It's not a good way to go about getting your needs met, because it involves another person. It's not, in other words, it's indirect. It's all these people are there. They have some organization, I don't know if it's spiritual, that deals with Well, I wouldn't say spiritual. Let me just take that back. You can find ways, maybe different information, whether it's a support group or just online material, where you learn how to deal. Oh, well, here's a good one. It is kind of a spiritual group. It's, nonviolent communication is an example of this, where you learn how to get your needs met and ask for what you want. And also, I think they talk about asserting yourself, but it's really about anything when you're talking to other people, how you communicate in a way that is effective. Nonviolent communication is not about being a victim, and that can come in different ways. Even if you try to tolerate what other people are doing, and you're trying to be agreeable by doing that, you're actually doing something against yourself. So that's not acceptable either. But there's a book, and I think it's a community too, around that, but definitely a book called Nonviolent Communication that you should check out if you're interested in learning how to deal with people in a more effective manner. Because Pisces is a water sign, and because Mars is about taking action, or, why do we take action? We want to get our needs met. We want to achieve things, which is a form of getting our needs met. So taking action for a Pisces person, or all water signs, if it's met with resistance, the Pisces person may resort to manipulation, guilting, trying to imply that the other person is doing something to them. Well, that's a form of guilting, but I'm trying to think of other types of manipulation. Maybe just saying, oh, well, okay. I guess that's guilting too, isn't it? But manipulation is a very weak way of getting one's needs met. Another idea is about coercion. When somebody gets angry, when their needs are not, when their request is not accepted, that's a form of manipulation too, because you're trying to coerce somebody. You're trying to strong arm them into giving you what you want. The best way to get your needs met is through being someone who is, first of all, loving oneself enough to believe that you deserve what you're asking for, because that is incredibly important. So that if somebody turns you down, you don't have to act like, oh, it's the end of the world. But by the same token, you don't try to pretend that you don't have certain needs that you do. I do suggest that people examine what their needs are and why they have certain needs, because sometimes people are demanding of others things that they shouldn't demand of them. With Mars in Pisces, sometimes because the person may be coming from a disempowered viewpoint, they may try to blame when they're trying to make something happen that doesn't happen. There can be self-defeating patterns, as I said before. One of the best things about Mars in Pisces is the flexibility that they have. They are kind of timid about asking others for their need, for what they want. But, when people are being very aggressive, that can be quite oppressive in a relationship. And these people are very respectful of others' feelings. So they know that other people may not want to give them what they want, and they don't try to strong arm others. They are patient enough to wait for what they want and to respect other people's timelines. So rather than the Mars and Aries person who may be too pushy most of the time, the Mars and Pisces person is like a Buddhist, where they believe that, all in due time, things will unfold when they're supposed to. There's always that spiritual part of themselves where they're willing to have their dreams come true at the appropriate time. They're not just frothing at the mouth usually. I said usually because sometimes we all have times where we get impatient for things to happen. So in terms of the sex drive of Mars and Pisces, because Pisces is ruled by Neptune and Neptune deals with illusion, these people can have a rich fantasy life, and they may idealize the sexual act and the physical side of the relationship. And this can make it very important to them, but it can also blind them to the fact that the other areas of the relationship are lacking. So there always has to be like a realistic evaluation of the relationship the person is in, so that the person with Mars and Pisces does not end up believing they're in this grand love affair when really it's just, great sex. They can be romantic. They can be changeable from one day to the next. And there is a real ability of these types of people to let go of anger if the partner has done something wrong and just take them back. And this is kind of like Venus and Pisces too, where this person can find themselves forgiving a person over and over again instead of breaking up with them. And that could lead to a long-term relationship with somebody who's not suitable for them. Okay, well, I hope that you enjoyed this. And if you'd like a personalized version of this, which my natal chart interpretation is, along with looking at the next year of transits in some areas, the trends in some areas of your life, please click on the link for that. Thank you for listening. Bye.